Good afternoon. Getting right down to business here. We're doing it live, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons, right after Guy Benson show at 3 and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with my pal Randy Wang at 5. Mottek On Money, live on the air, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com and your on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple iTunes, YouTube, all of your favorite podcast platforms. And, of course, we're on the socials, too. Big day for Bitcoin, hitting a record high today above 112,000 for the very first time. Looks like it's pulled back below 112K this afternoon. Right now at 111, 143 here at last check. On Wall Street, the star once again, NVIDIA, known as the Magnificent One in the Magnificent 7 tech stock list. NVIDIA shares moving up nearly $3 today at the close to $162.88. With the AI chip maker becoming the first company ever to cross a $4 trillion market cap. The Dow came in for a closing gain of 217 points, settling at 44,458. The S&P 500 up 38 points, near its all-time high at 6,263. And the NASDAQ at a record high, closing up 193 at 20,611. NVIDIA stock closing at a record high after taking the crown as the most valuable company in history. We'll talk more about that coming up here shortly. President Trump unveiling more notices with tariff rates ranging from 20 to 30% to countries including now the Philippines, Libya, Algeria, and Iraq ahead of the August 1st deadline he's now imposed to reimpose country-specific tariffs. The president said no extensions will be granted to countries that have not struck trade deals before then. Copper hit a record high this week, pulling back today. This as the president said he expects to put a 50% tariff on copper and threatened to place 200% duties on pharmaceuticals. The notes from the Fed's last big meeting came out today, showing only a couple of Fed officials at the June meeting supported interest rate cuts as soon as this month. At the June meeting, the policymakers held interest rates unchanged. Now the bets are being placed as to what the Fed's next move might be. Looks like a New York Mellon Bank, also known as BNY, Bank of New York Mellon, would become the primary custodian of the reserve assets of the $500 million stablecoin Ripple. And Bank of New York Mellon, BK, is the symbol on that one, taking the spotlight as well today. Automakers still nervous about the tariffs, especially overseas automakers, including German automakers. Mercedes and Porsche count on U.S. sales to make up about 25% of their total sales. Earlier this week, Mercedes reported second quarter global car sales fell 9%, with U.S. sales down 12% compared to a year ago, with tariffs on all imports starting in early April imposed by the Trump administration. Taking a look at what else is happening, we see the price of gold moving higher at $3,328, silver at 36 and change. Platinum has seen a wild ride this year, still near its all-time high. Well, certainly not the all-time high, but the high we've seen in the last 52 weeks, certainly in the last 11 or 12 years, actually, at around $1,383.80. It had popped above $1,400 an ounce just recently. On the merger front, a big story today, WK Kellogg, the maker of Corn Flakes, Fruit Loops, and other iconic cereals, grabbing investors' attention today after a report said the privately owned Italian maker Ferrero Rocher and Nutella had its sights set on the company, which has struggled to find its footing amid changes in food preferences, according to the Wall Street Journal. People reported to be familiar with the negotiations, reported that Ferrero is closing in on a deal to buy Kellogg's for $3 billion, with details possibly being ironed out as soon as this week. Closer to home, L.A. County and 8 cities, including Los Angeles, Santa Monica, Culver City, and others, joining a lawsuit now against the Trump administration over tactics used by federal agents during recent ICE raids here in Southern California. Social media also erupting over the recent developments. Darrell Issa, congressman who represents California's 48th congressional district, posted this: if only Karen Bass worked as hard for fire victims in Los Angeles as she does criminal illegals. Democrats aren't used to seeing the law being enforced, said Jeremy Redfern, communications director of Florida Republican Attorney General there, posting on X. But luckily, he said, Karen was able to speak to the manager, quoting this guy in Florida. ICE isn't going anywhere and will continue to do what Mayor Bass has failed to do to protect the citizens of Los Angeles, according to another post by ICE. And I'll discuss the latest this hour with AMMON BLAIR, former U.S. Border Patrol agent and U.S. Army officer, nowadays senior fellow at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, who specializes in border security and immigration issues. We'll also be hearing from Norm Langer, owner of Langer's Deli restaurant in the MacArthur Park area of Los Angeles. He'll be joining me live later this hour for a frontline report on what's happening in the MacArthur Park area. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, Bitcoin, the whole works now. Joining us live, veteran investment expert and money manager Bryan Perry, editor of BryanPerryInvesting.com, author of the 25% Cash Machine. Bryan, great to have you with us. Good afternoon to you, sir.
So good to be with you, Frank. Thanks so very much. We are at a time here where the market is being somewhat dominated by MOMO and FOMO. A lot of momentum right now investing, as well as a lot of fear of missing out. The market is not buying into any kind of a tariff tantrum situation here. The acronym of TACO, Trump always chickens out, is once again being applied here. And there was some tacit movement here in the language from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent as well, that the August 1 activation date is still a quote flexible time frame. So there's still a lot of work being done here in the trade area here, and the market is pricing in just more pause and extension, if you will, here, and as well as the Fed notes today that came out here, the Fed minutes from the last prior meeting here talked about. It just gave a notion that the Fed is now starting to see maybe some hairline cracks in the labor market here, and that some of that will be augmented by AI and elimination of a lot of jobs, and that there may be some pressure. So the leaning is, though, the bond market had a nice day today. It rallied well on the reaction of and the assumption that the Fed was going to start to be more dovish, and that's really supportive for equities all around here. And certainly, as you mentioned, NVIDIA is still king of the road here, led by with other names like Broadcom, Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, the big names here that really much are dominating the AI digital transformation period here, which is going to rival the internet here easily going forward. And I'd say that you were pretty much probably in around, if you had to compare it with the internet, we're probably in like 1998, where 99 was just huge, and then 2000 was a bust, and it just things got overpriced. So we're probably in the middle innings here of this massive AI cap spending, full cycle throttle that's on, and so there's more to go. But people have to understand that this is there'll be some piling on here toward the top, and there. But again, this is a great build out period here. It's we had that big DeepSeek sell off there related back in April, and then some, and it was just, and since then it's just been all everything going forward here with data center build outs and all things AI. So I like what I'm seeing here from the standpoint of going into the earnings season with the kind of momentum here. Now it's all about forward guidance here. When these companies report, are they going to still say that business is not only good, it's great? And that's going to be, very important here for the market to continue to, trend higher here from current levels here, because we're getting into some PE ratios now, which would basically prescribe to the fact that we're getting, fully valued here on a short-term basis.
On the air live with Bryan Perry, and it's wonderful to have you with us. It's been a while since we chatted behind live microphones here, Bryan Perry, and so much to talk about. What about Bitcoin hitting a record high today?
Just fantastic. Now the Bitcoin is tethered somewhat to the Nasdaq here, so they tend to move in, together, because risk on is, it moves over to the crypto space as well. It's a breakout above 110 here, and so the next move is, I think, 120 or higher on Bitcoin here, and it's also starting to broaden out the crypto space, which I've been really much just focused on Bitcoin. Ethereum had it's starting to turn higher here. But you've also seen other coins that have been building bases for up to a year now. And I would say, take a look at Tron, TRON, and XRP. Those both look like they're going to start to march higher here in terms of the whole field of altcoins that are out there. So those are the two that jumped out on my screens today in terms of like what else is there to do in the crypto space that's not just the 1, 2, 3 names, which is Bitcoin, Solana, and Ethereum. Beyond that, though, Bitcoin looks like it has,
Take a break there, Bryan. We're going to let you get, there's so much big news here, a lot to take in, and I'm just elated to have you back with us here. And Ethereum all of a sudden close to 2,800 once again. That's seen an impressive rebound from this year's lows. And Bitcoin right now hovering just above 111, popping above 112 earlier today. And we see Solana, which is also getting attention this year at 157, and even Doge ticked higher to 18 cents. A lot happening in the crypto space. And the big news today, Bitcoin cracking above 112, hitting an all-time high.
Well, you've also got this, the whole business of stable coins, has really become legitimate and has built so much credibility here, especially with the IPO of Circle coming out here, which is, vaulted higher here from its $50 opening bid up to over, $300. Now it's back to $200. And you've got a number of things happening here in the crypto space where, the regulators are starting to come in here. The stable coin is becoming more widespread now. You've got, as you noted, with Bank of New York getting involved here. You've got Amazon and Walmart now talking about issuing their own form of stable coins as well. And the Treasury, is starting to adopt this as a digital dollar, stabilizer, as something to benchmark digital dollars against. So this is important development here, and it just brings further risk-on money into the entire crypto space, Frank. And the whole stablecoin aspect of it has been it's been well represented in Washington now. There's a lot of representatives in Congress that want to see Bitcoin and stablecoin and other cryptos become a bigger part of the currency conversation.
What about some of the ancillary crypto-related stocks? Bitmine has seen a wild ride after a big run-up, a big drop recently, and then and Circle, you mentioned, pulling back today by more than $4, back to 200 and change after a very impressive run-up since its IPO. What about names like that and some of the crypto miners and ETFs and so forth?
Well, it's interesting here. You're starting to see everything wake up now. We just saw, Mara, M-A-R-A. Marathon is they're a kind of a name that gets a lot of option activity out there, and that just broke above its 200-day moving average here. A lot of this has been down and out for quite some time now, and a lot of it's coming back into play. So some of these names, and I do like MARA. I've got that in one of my trading services here. Trades very liquid name. But Circle, I think, is most impressive because you've got Visa, MasterCard also, which have strong relationships with Circle. So there's a chance here that Circle could come in further and, maybe in the 150 area, something like from 200. And I'd be inclined to take a hard look at that because that's a long-term good story here. And it was just like when Tesla first came out. It was $50, and then Fidelity went in there and just bought a huge slug of stock, and then the stock went right to 100, and it was just history after that. So I think Circle is one of those names that's a dominant name in stablecoin, and is the leader. And so you want to be in those companies here that are first to market and have first mover advantage here, similar to like Uber over Lyft and other types of ride sharing wannabes. Circle is the first the big mover to this market here, and it's the institutional darling. So I'd say that if this does come in and you've got support at 150, then that's a really good place for long-term investors to take a hard look at this.
All right, you mentioned Tesla, and let's check that one out. It's seen a wild ride. No longer officially part of the Mag 7, right? Broadcom replaced it a while ago. Tesla down $1.93 today, back to $295.88. It should also be noted Elon Musk's AI chatbot Grok drawing severe flack. Something happened there in the last 24 hours with anti-Semitic messages. According to the Grok folks, those are being addressed and all kinds of crazy things happening there. What about Tesla and Elon Musk and the whole works there?
Well, it's a lot going on there. Anytime Elon's involved, there's many parts of that conversation that can go right or wrong. The stock has pulled back to 296 today on a pullback from really almost a 350 level, and part of that is because you launched this America Party here, which is it'll be a disruptive party to say the least when it comes to politics, because he will draw his fair share of non-contenders, but those that could upset the House if they win a few seats, and so that's important. But this whole controversial responses here about Grok responding to some user about Adolf Hitler would be dealing with Texas floods and anti-white hate and things like that and all that. It was just like, I don't know. To me, it's like some of the stuff is probably instigated, by bad folks trying to create bad things in Elon's network here. So I'm going to kind of camp out and not go further into that here because I know it's still, a very fluid situation. I think that Elon is quite frankly, a heck of a well-intended person who really tries to do best for the U.S. And his criticism of this big beautiful bill, I think, was somewhat foundational because it does create a lot of spending. The market loves these big spending bills because it just generates that much more liquidity in the market here, and at the same time it has yet to be proven that prosperity has ever paid down our national debt, and it has not in the past. So here we are with Elon, being once again coming back to the well and getting hit by his commentary, which I think is legitimate from the standpoint of financial fiscal responsibility. And yet this bill went through. It's gonna keep taxes low. It's gonna spend a lot of money in some areas here, which the market's excited about. And at the same time, it's yet to be seen if tariffs and any further prosperity from what they consider will be rising GDP growth will pay for it all. That's all to be said. I think Elon is, I think he just cares a lot about the country, and I think he's the brightest guy in the world. And I think the Tesla is down at these levels here. I think this robo-taxi is going to be in the millions of robo-taxis in the next 3 to 5 years around the U.S., maybe by 2030, call it. And I think it's a great investment at this level.
On there live with Brian Perry, editor of BrianPerryInvesting.com and author of the 25% Cash Machine. And Brian Perry, let me ask you the big question here, and always appreciate your very thoughtful responses. Any specific places where you are putting money now and or taking it off the table?
Well, yeah, there's plenty to do, Frank. And you have a dollar here that's still in a primary downtrend here. So on this pullback here, gold and silver, I think is a good buy on the dip, and I think that there's much further to go here. And again, you would have seen gold. You would have seen the dollar respond better if it really did believe that this bill was going to just somehow pay for it all. In terms of stocks, I do like Amazon here because this Prime Day, next 2-3 days here of the Prime shopping season is going on right now, and a lot of consumers are pulling forward their Christmas shopping right now before the tariffs or the potential tariffs kick in. So they're enjoying a record sales here for retail on their Amazon Prime. J.P. Morgan right now, that pulled back here from from 290 to 280 and change. They're going to have a solid quarter here, and I think that this is a stock that people should have as their number one financial holding here above all else. And I just think it's a stock you buy on dips. Nebius is a new name for people. NBIS. That's November Bravo India Sierra is the symbol there, and they're heavily into the data center, what we call the rack systems here, and they work with NVIDIA and all these other companies that build out the rack systems within the data centers here. And the stock came out hot. It ran up to around $60. It's pulled back here to around 47. I do like that stock here. The same with the Super Microcomputer, SMCI. They do the liquid-cooled servers for the data centers as well here, because these data centers run hot, and you got to run these GPUs at much lower temperatures, or else they just cook. So SMCI is breaking out here. If it breaks above 50, that stock's pushing higher here. In your backyard, SoFi, this bank here has now been allowed to go back into the crypto business here. And Anthony Noto, who runs that company, very bright guy. I do love the way he manages this company here, and it's pretty much the Gen Z bank of choice. So as the inherited money, it's in the $30 trillion range, moves from the boomers to the millennials to the Gen Zers. The SoFi is going to collect a whole bunch of these assets under management here. SOFI trades around $20, and it's been on a tear. And lastly, GE Aerospace, their backlog is like $123 billion here going forward here. They're the engine of choice for the airlines around the world. There's a whole remodification of fleets around the world here for airlines, and GE is one of the de facto engine makers for that business. Coming off real quickly here, I think Adobe here has really missed their mark, and there's a lot of competition now for what they do in the AI space. So the Acrobat types of tools, and so there are other tools that are showing up that are really hitting into Adobe's space, and I would be very careful here. Also, some of the insurance companies here, which have always been riding out really high on fat margins, are starting to see AI also creep into their space here. Marsh McLellan and some of the other big names in the space are starting to break down. So technically, they're starting to see what is, forthcoming margin pressure here in insurance, and that's been a fat and happy business for a long time here. But like real estate, at the 6% business today, I recommended Zillow, group, and they've come up with a super app, for all housing. They'll buy your house, they'll close your house, they'll do all the paperwork for $500, and then they'll also, service the mortgage. So it's just one of these types of situations where there's commoditization of these businesses because of AI, and you got to be careful not to be in those businesses that used to have a moat around them, but they no longer do because of AI.
On your live with Brian Perry at BRYANPerryInvesting.com, and tomorrow the earnings season begins once again with Delta taking the spotlight. Right? We mentioned airlines here. What about Delta here? That'll be talked about tomorrow.
Probably the best managed airline of all. They've all come down. They're I don't even know if they're most of them are down year to date at this point in time here. They had a big rally, going into 2025, and they've all come down here. Mainly, they're still doing okay with the premium seats and the higher classes, the first class and business class, but they're not seeing the same volumes of main cabin flyers that they used to. And I'm just wondering whether or not this is a reflection of the fact that, we've had the summer travel season here, which is always priced in beforehand. But what does that mean here in the fall? And and so that's really kind of where that goes. It's trading at $50. It was down. It was up to 70. It'll be a key indicator for the airline business. And again, if it's the best managed of all the airlines, Frank.
All right, we'll be watching it tomorrow. Brian, thank you very much for taking the call today. Wish we had even more time, and thank you so very much for joining us. That is veteran investment expert and money manager Brian Perry, editor of BRYANPerryInvesting.com, and author of the 25% Cash Machine, live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues 790 KBC. Winning day for the stock market with the NASDAQ hitting a record high. Bitcoin also hitting a record high today, popping above 112,000 for the first time. But now coming in for a closing gain of 217 at 44,458. The S&P 500 of 38 at 6,263. NASDAQ of 193 to a record high 20,611. The yield in the 10-year note now at 4.34%. Right now, Bitcoin is just below, 111, 143 is where we're at right now for Bitcoin. Ethereum just shy of 2770, and Doge at the moment at 18 cents. And now the latest news on 790 KBC.
The No Contest Wrestling Podcast.
I am the heel that you love to hate, O'Shea Jackson Jr.
TJ Jefferson, what up? Friends of the show are really wanting to engage with this podcast.
Welcome, AJ Francis.
They were like, we just want you to cause a ruckus. So I went out there, do my own version of a pipe bomb, and it went everywhere.
Wrestling royalty right here. Mick Foley. Anything that you're glad that it's gone?
Well, glad the chair shots to the head are gone.
The No Contest Wrestling Podcast, part of the Rich Eisen Podcast Network.
Can you tell them where to find it?
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Mottek On Money continues here at 790 KABC, standing tall for small business here in the Los Angeles area. Hot drama in the MacArthur Park area this week as federal agents comb through the park. Some agents on horseback. That got a lot of attention this week. MacArthur Park, of course, has seen a lot of crime in recent years, homelessness there as well. Nearby Langer's Deli, which opened in 1947, threatened to close last summer over safety concerns in that area. And we spoke to the owner of Langer's Deli, Norm Langer, at that time, and he's joining us live once again this afternoon. Mr. Langer, thank you very much for coming to the line here today on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful to have you with us, and I hope all is going well there. And give us an update from your vantage point on what's happening there around Langer's Deli.
Well, as was publicized in the paper and all over the news, on Monday we had a conglomeration of vehicles and police and federal agents, and I don't know if we had any Marines or not. I know we had the California National Guard, and I think it lasted, 30 or 45 minutes, and it was nothing but a show of force and flex their muscles. They did not arrest anybody. They didn't pick up anybody. Nobody was detained. Nothing. It was a show of force, and I have yet to figure out what it was supposed to accomplish, except fear.
Let me ask you this. Of course, you spoke out about the situation there around your wonderful place, your iconic delicatessen there, Langer's Deli, right there adjacent to MacArthur Park. And you, at the time, criticized the city leadership for not doing enough to deal with crime and homelessness in the area. Have things changed over the past year?
Yes, they have. They've changed for the better in one respect. We had a gang shooting several months ago up on 6th and Alvarado. 5 people were shot. In conjunction with that, and I don't know whether it was defense or what, but the city put fences up on the sidewalk, not on the street, on the sidewalk, from 6th and Alvarado to Wilshire and Alvarado, and from Wilshire to 7th. And these fences prevented all of the illegal vending and illegal merchandise. It also stopped a lot of the homeless. They had to go other places because there was no way to sleep or entertain their buddies and friends on the sidewalk, not enough room. So it's been a big help as far as cleaning up the area. We still have a problem in the park as far as drug dealers and as far as people of ill health and mental capacity. And I think that will be cleaned up when we get more money in order to do it. I think the funding is a big problem.
Mr. Langer, have you decided to remain open? Last year you had threatened to close because of conditions in that area.
Well, my thought at the time was I wanted to be here for the World Cup, for the Super Bowl, and for the Olympics. That was my goal. And it was the downturn in business at that time was not enough for me to keep the doors open. Since then, it's gotten better. Am I making any money? No, but I'm paying my employees and everybody's happy about it. So if I can break out even, pay the employees, give people a place to go, put a smile on people's face, I will stay open. If it goes a downturn, no, then I'll be forced to close.
Since then, you've gotten a lot of support, of course. Los Angeles business and civic leader Rick Caruso visited you right around that time. And tell us about the kind of support you've been receiving.
Well, Rick Caruso is a 100% gentleman. He was down here with a group, and I couldn't ask for better. I've gotten support from everybody in the community that I can think of, be it the local businessman or the CEO of large companies. You name them, I've had them in there. And it's been a pleasure. They all compliment me on the food that we're putting out, on the quality, and they all, and I will say it again, all thank me for staying open and giving them a place to go and enjoy lunch.
Well, we certainly join the chorus. In the meantime, heartbreak there in downtown Los Angeles on the restaurant scene with Kohl's announcing it'll be closing after being open for more than 100 years. Kohl's will serve its last meal on August 3rd. What's your reaction to that heartbreaking news this week?
I did a press release on it yesterday. I mean, that's heartbreaking. You take a family that's run a business like this for 100 plus years and is closing because of downturn. It's sad because it's something that didn't have to happen. Had city services, and I'm not going to point any fingers at who, what, when, where, and why, because that's something that could be discussed till we're blue in the face and no answer. But they weren't being taken care of. They did not have the customer base anymore. Customers were not feeling safe. I had a problem many, many years ago where a lot of the CEOs from downtown offices wanted to come for lunch with the secretaries, and the secretaries didn't want to walk through the visual blight. They didn't want to lose their appetite. Well, all of that's been cleaned up. All of that's been changed, and for the better. I make sure that my side of 7th Street is clear all the way to my parking lot. It's clean, it's steam cleaned, and I do the best I can to make sure that my customers, male, female, young, or old, are happy to come and enjoy.
And Mr. Langer, are you seeing an increased police presence around your place and in the MacArthur Park area?
It's the presence is just now starting to pick up because a lot of the rioting, as I would choose to call it, has subsided. We had lost a lot of people from Rampart, as all divisions of LAPD did, in order to take care of the rioting and the problems downtown. All of that subsided. We've got back a lot of our regular personnel, and they're doing an excellent job.
And Mr. Langer, in addition to all the issues we just discussed, certainly inflation has been a big issue impacting the restaurant business. The cost of beef, for example, has skyrocketed, and labor costs up. What about all those factors in running a business in LA these days?
It's difficult because the changes need to be not day to day, but moment to moment. And all of the items you talk about have gone up considerably. I've considered making new menus and raising the prices, but to be honest, people can't afford it. People can't afford it where it is now. To me, to raise the prices is futile. I'll raise the prices and I'll wind up losing 30-40% of my business and come out with the same amount of money, win or lose, at the end of the day or at the end of the year. So at this time, I've decided, suck it up, see what the next 30, 60, 90 days brings, and then I'll make decisions at that time. If we want to believe our president that things are going to stabilize and this is going to happen and that's going to happen, okay, I'll give him the opportunity. Why not? I've been there 78 years. Another 3 months, 6 months isn't going to make any difference. So I support the community, I support the city, but more importantly, I support my employees.
Mr. Langer, thank you very much for joining us live and telling us the great Langer's Deli story here. And we'll keep an open line to you and look forward to your updates. Norm Langer, the owner of Langer's Deli in the MacArthur Park area. Thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
We wish you all the best. Thank you very, very much. And out to the freeways now on 790 KABC.
The United States Soccer Federation presents the U.S. Soccer Podcast.
The United States have the lead.
The United States in full command.
To the back post, settled, scores! Centering, doubling his tally.
Never miss a game.
Hooks it across, into the middle, and there's the opening goal. 2 for the United States.
Never miss a moment.
Barreling in, cutting in, going for goal, deflected and in! Yeah!
The U.S. Soccer Podcast. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Mottek On Money continues, 790 KABC. Good afternoon. Los Angeles County and 8 cities, including the city of Los Angeles, Santa Monica, and Culver City, now joining in a lawsuit against the Trump administration over the tactics used by federal agents during recent ICE raids, including what we just talked about in the MacArthur Park area. ICE responding, saying it's not going anywhere and will continue to do what Mayor Bass has utterly failed to do, protect the citizens of Los Angeles, according to one tweet that came out, or X that came out from ICE. Let's bring in AMMON BLAIR now, former U.S. Border Patrol agent and U.S. Army officer, nowadays senior fellow at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, who specializes in border security and immigration issues. Mr. BLAIR, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
And certainly our heart breaks for everyone in Texas, given that horrific disaster and the children and the families there. So our prayers go to you in the face of that horrific disaster. But wanted to get your reaction of what's happening here in Los Angeles with these very highly publicized and dramatic raids that the nation is seeing.
Yeah, unfortunately, it feels like I'm back in Iraq, and I'll say why. Unfortunately, our law enforcement are having to wear face masks. Our law enforcement are attacked by what seems their own citizens in order to protect the citizens. Whenever if you go to Mexico, if you go to Iraq or Afghanistan, you'll notice that many of the law enforcement that are combating the foreign terrorist organizations are also having to combat their own communities, and then also having to wear their face masks, so that way not only they're protected, but also their families. And so it's kind of sad to me to see that here in the streets in America, our law enforcement that are there to protect the citizenry are having to do the same thing that I had to do over in the Middle East. And really that's what it is. We've now gone to a point where it feels as if our streets are like a third world country, where you have political officials, elected officials coming out and inciting just threats against the Border Patrol or ICE or any law enforcement whatsoever, and by just conducting the rule of law.
This is our first conversation, so tell us more about your background. We applaud and salute your service to the United States. Tell us about your military background and your service.
Sure. Yeah, so I served a little over 22 years in the military. 19 of it was as an enlisted soldier. I was an officer for 3 until I was forced out. I was forced to resign my commission because I didn't take the COVID vaccine. And then at the same time, I was also a Border Patrol agent. I served on the border for a little over 10 and a half years, and then conducted private intelligence for a private intelligence firm until I became a senior fellow at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, where I focus on all external and internal threats to Texas's security.
Thank you for that. We're on the air live with AMMON BLAIR. And Mr. BLAIR, let me ask you this. Given the fact that Los Angeles and other so-called sanctuary cities and states are locking horns with the federal government, how do you expect all this to play out?
And to be honest, if our states don't rise up to the occasion and help, it's going to be very hard. And the reason I say that is we're a constitutional republic, and our government and our government agencies are only so big. And so it's going to take all the efforts of all of our local, county, state law enforcement, and also the National Guard to assist in this effort. And if not, then really you're a sanctuary by omission, not necessarily by policy, but by omission. And so really that's what's going to take nationwide is going to be a whole of society approach on this, as on the opposite side, there's a whole of society approach to counter it.
Tell us about what you see is working and not working based on your national experience covering these matters.
Yeah, so really what is working is Florida. If you look at Florida's model, Governor DeSantis codified in law a Department of Immigration there in Florida. So everything is done by task authority through him and through that organization. So everything is completely organized. All their law enforcement from local all the way up, and every state agency is all on board. He also created the Florida State Guard, which is separate from the Florida Military Department. That way he has direct command and control, just like a president has over SOCOM. He has direct command and control over that State Guard, which is the premier state defense force in the nation. He has a special missions unit that is all former Special Operations Command, Navy SEALs, Rangers, you name it, to be able to respond to not only natural disasters, but man-made disasters and threats like what you guys are seeing in L.A.
All right, and you got a front row seat there in Texas. How are situations being handled there?
Yeah, good question. So on the border, it's actually very different. Since the majority of our border, about 95%, is private property. So U.S. Northcom took over the border from California to El Paso. However, in Texas, it's much different. And so the cartels have also realized that. And so that way, the wars below Texas are completely engulfed over the plazas. Since Northcom is continuing to seal an operation control west of El Paso, it now leaves our landowners and everyone else somewhat vulnerable here to that. And so the cartels have actually shifted in terms of how they operate and how they transport or how they traffic their either narcotics, humans, or any other illicit or illicit goods.
All right, compare that to what's happening here in California.
Yeah, so California, you guys have at the border, you actually have U.S. Northcom being able to seal that border. You do still have issues with tunnels, and those tunnels were actually helped by Hamas and Hezbollah, if y'all did not know that. They actually helped the Mexican cartels as they had to deal, in Israel, they had to deal with that type of sandy material to dig tunnels underneath. And then on the interior of the cities, y'all have, like you said, Karen Bass, you have elected officials that are working against local law enforcement, against ICE, against the military, you name it. They have completely turned everything around where your law enforcement are deemed as the fascists, the enemy by the people. And so in Texas, that's completely the opposite. Same thing with Florida, where we revere our law enforcement and we help and support them. So I guess it's a complete opposite.
Mr. Blair, thank you very much for joining us live here. That is AMMON BLAIR, former U.S. Border Patrol agent, U.S. Army officer, nowadays senior fellow at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Look forward to many more conversations with you. Thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much. See you tonight. Read about it tomorrow, but hear it now on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang. And I'll be back with more at 4 tomorrow afternoon right here on 790 KBC.
Jim Rome takes on sports.
Why? Because you're not playing me.
With rapid-fire takes.
And a lot to get to, and I'm not sure you're going to like all of it. Honestly, I don't even care if you like all of it or not. I have a job to do.
Scorching debates.
On any given week, you have lots to beef about. Take advantage of it. Get up in here.
He's the Spitfire of sports smack.
She's not my fault. We will get to all of that.
The Jim Rome Show podcast.
Get up in here, and we'll beef later on. What's your beef?
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
You've been warned.